Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
It is with great pleasure that I'm able to introduce Donna Smith-Moncrieffe. Donna is the director of Metaphysics Research, a firm that was founded in 2010 to examine afterlife studies in the area of mediumship, reincarnation, and any body of evidence that would illuminate our understanding of the true nature of reality. She has 20 years' experience conducting and overseeing studies in the criminology and health field. She has used her academic and scientific training and research methods to apply this to the research into the afterlife. Many of you may not know that scientists who examine mediumship and afterlife phenomena had prominent careers prior to introducing science to spirituality. Here are a few names. William Crookes, from 1832 to 1919, was a chemist and a physicist prior to examining mediumship. Alfred Russel Wallace, from 1823 to 1913, was a biologist. And Arthur Conan Doyle, 1859 to 1930, was a physician and author of the legendary Sherlock Holmes series prior to writing volumes on spiritualism and the afterlife. The list of scientists go on. We are privileged that Donna Smith-Moncrieffe has used her scientific background, like many predecessors, to bring new research on this subject. Thank you, Donna, for being the first Canadian to examine the study of mediumship so systematically. We will now hear from Donna to help us gain an overview of the scientific evidence of the afterlife.
I'm not sure that you know, but we have 150 years of evidence in this area, in mediumship and afterlife. I feel that it has been suppressed. It's either been sometimes suppressed, ignored, or not actually promoted. And so it is sometimes very necessary for us to sort of amalgamate that together and then share it either in books or in a presentation like this. So I'm going to be talking to you about sort of 6 different areas. There are more, but I don't want to take up too much of my time. I want to talk to you a little about some of the scientific evidence we have in terms of mental mediumship, physical mediumship, electrical voice phenomena, near-death experiences, past life regression, and out-of-body experiences. And why I chose those is, so for example, if I stood up here and just talked to you about mental mediumship, that would be only one line of evidence. But if I'm talking to you about several different studies that are coming from different places, when they come together, we call that different lines of evidence. And if all those lines of evidence come to say the same thing, then we have very strong proof and conclusion that perhaps our consciousness does survive beyond physical death. Now, one thing, you will hear me say the term survival of consciousness every now and then. I'm talking about basically the fact that right now you and I are talking, you're hearing me, and our consciousness was believed to reside fully in the brain. However, what I'm talking about is evidence that consciousness is outside of our brain. It's beyond our physical body. And that's the only way we could be having a discussion about talking to the dead this afternoon, correct? Because of that, then everything we would be doing here this afternoon would just be nonsensical, and we wouldn't actually be able to validate it. So what I'm going to start off with here is measurement of mental mediumship. How on earth do we know that mediums can actually talk and communicate with the deceased? So I conducted a study starting 2010 for 2 years. I used 10 mediums, and of course 3 of the 10 mediums are here today, which is wonderful. 10 mediums over a 2-year period, and 88 of their clients. So I followed 88 of their clients after the reading. That's called retrospective. And prospectively, I also did double-blind studies. And a double-blind study means that a recruiter independently recruited the actual sitters. When I use the term sitters, I'm talking about clients that go to a medium. The medium didn't know anything about the client, and also myself, I wouldn't know anything about the client. That's what we mean by double-blind study. And out of the 88 readings, I found that 73% were able to demonstrate high level of evidence. So these balls that you're seeing here in the funnel, I used high level of evidence for me in my study was being able to accurately identify the cause of death or lifelong illness of the sitter, or being accurate with the names of the deceased, as well as information no one else would know. Now, one might say, well, if you are all fairly experienced, can I get a feel for people who have actually had a sitting with a medium before? Oh, okay, we're looking at about the whole The whole audience. Okay, I'm done. I can leave. She's like, no, stay. Okay. Now, you will notice that those kinds of high-level evidence you may not always see, but in my study, because you will sometimes, I had a measurement for a moderate level of evidence. Moderate level of evidence is they're able to moderately, it's not that specific, but it's still relevant to the sitter. But what I'm trying to explain here is I'm only using high-level evidence. It was very, very stringent, and what I was able to find was 7 out of those 10 mediums, 73% were at least able to hit those 3 criteria within an hour of a reading. And as I said, some of that was under controlled conditions. So for me, that was one aspect of my study that was able to demonstrate mental mediumship. And because I see such a high level of hands in the crowd, I still don't want to make an assumption that when I'm talking about mental mediumship, I'm talking about the ability to have clairvoyance, which is either clear seeing, clairsentience, being able to have strong feeling, or clairaudience, and there's about 5 of them. That's what I'm referring to. Now, rival theories. I know you're not going to be able to see the data on this, and if you are, then you've got some extrasensory powers that I'm not aware of. And it's not important that you be able to read the data. I'm going to explain it, but it's still important that it be up here. Now, you come across a lot of, when we are doing this kind of research, we have to control for certain things. And so, for example, cold reading and mentalists, there are cold readers and mentalists. And cold reading is because you're looking at me so intently, do you mind if I use you an example? Cold reading is, I am looking at you and all the stereotypes that we know about your type, I will start to give you information. That would be quite general, and sometimes perhaps I might, out of 10 times, I might get 1 right, and it's like, oh, you're talking to the deceased, you know. There are people, unfortunately, that are fraudulent and are doing cold readings, and mentalists have tried to indicate that all of what mediumship is fraudulent. Now, that's good, because we want to have skeptics. We want to have skeptics because it allows for scientists to control for this. So this study that I'm telling you about is Dr. Gary Schwartz. Thank goodness for him. He was a pioneer in the States who did what was called the Afterlife experiments. Approximately 10 years ago, I think maybe 13 now, he did this in 2001. And what he did is, it's a comparison group. I'm trying not to get too technical in this talk, but it's important that you understand this. He took 5 mediums, one of them which was John Edward, and you can actually see this on YouTube, and he asked them to name, Patricia Price was the actual sitter, and he asked them to, give as many facts to demonstrate that this was accurate, like historical facts, initials, names, temperament. Temperament is this person is like an extrovert and loves to laugh and meet new people, anything that would give evidence to demonstrate that the mediums were actually talking to their deceased loved ones. But then he took 68 non-mediums, students, because he's a professor. He took 68 people who were not mediums and actually pretended to read or tried to guess as many things as they could about the sitter, and look at the difference. The difference is that mediums, who are authentic mediums, got 78% accurate versus 36% accurate, which you're looking at 50% difference in terms of accuracy. So what this means is that the statistical probability of this difference occurring by chance is less than 1 in 10 million. Okay, 1 in 10 million chance that this difference could be resulting in something else. This tells you that the mediums that were able to accurately determine that they were talking to the deceased was a real relationship, meaning that it demonstrates survival of consciousness. Okay? And remember, there's a question and answer period, so if you have any thoughts, I should have mentioned there was paper in the back if you wanted to make notes. Okay, physical mediumship. Now I'm going to ask you to put up your hands. How many people have seen a medium do physical mediumship? Okay, Carolyn, Carolyn and Ben, and Bro, all the mediums. Now, okay, I'm going to interact with you a little bit, even before the question and answer period. Why do you think no one's hand went up here? No, Carolyn, you can't answer that. This is for the group here. Why do you think we don't have a lot of people experiencing physical mediumship. Please?
It's not as popular as it used to be, several generations.
Sorry, can I ask you to stand up, please?
It's not as popular as it used to be years ago, where they had the table moving, objects moving, that type. That's a physical mediumship.
Okay.
It got left behind
Okay.
years ago, and it went more.
Okay. So,
It got left behind.
okay, so the lady over here feels it's not popular. One more. Does anybody else know why we're not seeing physical mediumship?
It's dangerous.
Oh, you were at my talking. Sit down. Yeah. Why did I pick you? No, I'm just kidding.
It doesn't relate to us personally.
Oh, and can you elaborate for us?
Well, when we go to a medium and they talk about somebody in our past or relatives, people coming through, it hits home. It's what
Okay.
we want to know.
No, I'm glad you raised that, because that wasn't the answer, but I like that. I like that too, because it is more personable. But physical mediumship, and I'm not going to assume that everybody knows what physical mediumship is. Physical mediumship really, as this lady was talking about here, the personal experience one has with the medium when they're doing mental mediumship is very different from physical mediumship, when mediums, especially in the 19th century, were demonstrating levitation of tables, direct voice, sounds, things being thrown in the room, which is apport, and materialization, which is what I'm going to talk about. And the gentleman here, who I don't know how accurately he got that about the danger, is absolutely right. Helen Duncan is a famous case of physical mediumship where ectoplasm was coming out of her body during an actual seance. And in those days, the police, well, probably in these days it would be the same case, were very skeptical of what she was doing. She believed it was it was fraudulent. I'm actually going to show you the picture. Does that look like toilet paper from the back there? That's a medium with ectoplasm coming out of different parts of her mouth, ears, and where else is it coming out of? Hands. Well, I think it's only orifices it comes out of. Okay, so while I'm talking about it, I want you to keep that in mind. Imagine that that's Helen Duncan, and she was demonstrating physical mediumship, because what basically would have happened is ectoplasm is the material that allows the physical world to come through. Especially in the 19th century where there was the war, a lot of people flocked to physical mediums because the people they lost would actually physically be able to be seen, either their face or hands, through the ectoplasm. Now, going back to what the gentleman told us here about the danger was, with physical mediumship, ectoplasm, they usually sit in a cabinet because it's dangerous if people move. What happened is the police came in, raided her, and the ectoplasm flew right back into her body, gave her second-degree burns, and she died. Okay? And you Google, like, there's history on that. You can read about Helen Duncan, write it down. So, really, and when you look at the literature, it's amazing, the literature from the 19th century. What they have is they actually talk about the spirit world who's working with us. You know that. It's not just us. The spirit world is working today. They've been organizing this event long before I have, probably. Okay? And my understanding from the 19th century scientists is that they decided that ectoplasm is too dangerous. Okay? And so they're going to start to give other ways of communicating with us on the earth plane. So let me go back, because I stepped ahead a bit, about physical mediumship. Now, it does, for the new people to this, it just sounds absolutely bizarre. And especially, a lot of us haven't actually seen it. So, of course, we're going to be skeptical about it. So let's hear what evidence we have that ectoplasm, this that's coming out of the medium's mouth, actually exists. Okay, so the top scientists, including Sir William Crookes, who you heard from Rebecca as introduced, he was a chemist in the day and a physician, and he validated physical mediumship. Scientists have also validated the existence of ectoplasm in red light conditions. And so when scientists have looked at what that thing was that was coming out of the medium's mouth, they found that a chemical analysis of ectoplasm showed a colorless, slightly cloudy fluid with no smell, showing traces of cell detritus. The dried residues weighed 8.6 grams per liter with 6 grams of ash. So basically it is a substance that builds up from the circle of the sitters as well as from the physical medium's body. Okay? As well as George Meek in 1987 found that a total weight loss of 27 pounds among the 15 sitters occurred from the use of ectoplasm during materialization. So what George Meeks is saying, famous parapsychologist, is saying that when they measured the weight of people in a circle, because that's how they do it, they form a circle, the sitters, and the physical medium is in the cabinet, there was a difference in weight loss. So something was happening even with the sitters to create that physical mediumship. One word about physical mediums, do they still exist? Yes. In fact, it's William Churnet right here in Ottawa is working with a medium, a physical medium, who is right now channeling extraterrestrials. And that book is actually, first of all, I was so happy to meet a researcher in Canada because it felt like Canadians, we're just either hiding or we're not able to come out with this, but all the researchers that I've been communicating about this with over the years has been all in the States, especially Arizona. It's like something about that area produces people who are feeling comfortable about talking about this. But William Churnet is working with a physical medium in Canada who has published a book about the channelings of extraterrestrials. And when I first started talking to him, I said, "You're not going to tell me that all of this talking is to extraterrestrials, are you?" He says, "Oh, no. There are still discarnates." Discarnates is the term for a physical body, spirit without a physical body. "Oh, no, there are absolutely your loved ones and everyone that still has continued on." But he's saying there is information that we need for our planet now, and that's coming from that source. The other thing I want to just quickly say about physical mediumship as well, if you're interested in learning more about that, Robin Foy's heads the Physical Mediumship for You website. You can see a lot of information, pictures of transmigration, which is sort of the physical medium's face changing according to who the deceased is coming through. And the Scholes experiment, SCOLES experiment, you can Google that right on YouTube. Most famous experiment of physical mediumship, I think that was 10 years ago in England. Okay, electric voice phenomena. Hands for who knows about this. Okay, maybe just 15% of the room. Not a lot of people. Okay, so we've been talking about mediumship, but let's see, what other evidence is there that our soul continues on in the afterlife? Well, everybody knows Thomas Edison. Thomas Edison in 1920 was one of the first inventors to believe an instrument could be used to communicate with the deceased. And what is happening here is literally we're talking about a radio. Okay, let's talk about that because there's other ways, but to simplify it, a radio, and people were, in particular, Father Gemelli, I'll give you the example first before I actually go into what electrical voice phenomena is. And why I put this example in, it's especially interesting that it was from the Vatican, right? The Roman Catholic Church, very difficult for them to support any research that would substantiate, even though, of course, they talk about there's an afterlife, but not really talking about it in relation to a medium. So Father Gemelli, he was doing, in the 1950s, the Vatican Church was recording Gregorian chants on a magnetophone. When the wire on the machine kept breaking, Father Gemelli looked to the heavens and asked his dead father for help. To the shock of both men, his father's voice was heard on the recording saying, "Of course I shall help you. I'm always with you." Now, that was the first time. Now, you can imagine, he's not just hearing things from the radio. He was hearing, I believe, in fact, his father's, I'm sure the story goes that he actually named him as well. I just didn't put that in my notes. And that reference is the Italian Journal of Astra, 1990. And so with that, the Vatican Church indicated, yes, you can continue this research in terms of the voices coming through, because they're concerned if we're soliciting. So they don't really support what we're doing this afternoon because it's the thought that we're soliciting the spirits, you see? But if it's coming through a radio, short band wave radio, then they're not soliciting. Now what's interesting is Marcello Bacci, I just cut this out of YouTube so you can see what what it looks like. Here he's using his old radio. We're talking from the 1940s. This is obviously not contemporary. And he has been receiving paranormal voices from beyond using his radio tuned to white noise and shortwave band. How many people saw white noise? It's the same people that keep putting up their hand. And White Noise was a movie based on this, of course, but I wouldn't support White Noise because I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was a bit more negative, right? It was a bit more frightening for the actual characters. But I put this reference for you here, Marcello Bacci. If you were interested in seeing it, he has thousands of parents who have lost their children flock to him for years to hear their children's voices, to hear the lost ones of their loved ones coming through this machine. And scientists have come around the world to see this demonstrated. Okay, as well as Mark Macy. Now, why I put this last point in is someone could say, well, these are just voices coming from different radio frequencies. How do we know that it's coming from somebody that's a loved one? Well, Mark Macy, another parapsychologist, throughout the 1990s received two-way communications with spirit through telephone answering machines, radios, and computer printouts. So no one can just say they're random voices. They are having intelligent communication back and forth. And thanks to YouTube, you can just put an electrical voice phenomenon and look at it for yourself. Although I would just say with that, you'll hear it's a very difficult study to do because sometimes the interpretation of the voices are not that clear. Okay, so we're moving along to near-death experiences. Now I bet you a lot of you would be much more familiar with near-death experience. Anybody? Okay, good. How many people read Proof of Heaven? Okay, yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I wish they would not name it near-death experience, though, because a lot of people who are still learning about this subject, it's not about being near to death. It is about experiencing death and coming back. How many people saw Flatliners? That's right. That's where we first knew about it. I mean, they've known about this for a long time. They're basing it off of actual studies. So near-death experience, obviously, it is not, as I said, I prefer to call it short-term experience. And one of the reasons why this type of study about the afterlife is so important is because we have increased resuscitation techniques. So more people that we would have lost are not being lost. When their consciousness has stopped during surgery or through any kind of trauma, their souls are experiencing the afterlife, and they're coming back to tell us. And they're coming back to tell the doctors what was going on in the surgical room, and they're actually accurate. Okay, so let me give you some examples of that. Okay, so this is another comparison study. In science, we love comparison studies because it gives us more validation. And Dr. Michael Sabam, he found that 80% of his cardiac patients who had a heart attack without a near-death experience could not describe the process for survival. That means only 20% of his cases who didn't have a near-death experience but had a heart attack could not describe the process for revival. However, 100% of cardiac patients who had a near-death experience could describe how they were revived. So what does that tell you? That they are actually going somewhere, and actually they're dead according to the physical world because the machine is showing that they're dead, but they're coming back to tell the doctor. Now, for those skeptics, the skeptics will say, well, maybe he could have read about that. They could have read about revival techniques. But in some cases, and I discuss one in my book about a blind woman, I give different examples of how these cases are extraordinary because they talk about things that no one else could have ever known, and they know that they're dead because they have them timed. Another study that actually, a case that was in my study was, I thought, really extraordinary because it was a case of mediumship and near-death experience. For me, that was extreme validation that our soul survives physical death in this one. This young lady told me in her interview that she went to see a medium. She was actually pulled there. She didn't believe in mediumship. She actually had a drug overdose. Maybe about 3 months before she saw the medium. But she thought she had lucid dreaming. She wasn't sure she died. Lucid dreaming is a very strong sense that it's real, but you're not sure. She had a drug overdose. She said she met her father. She was talking to her father. She could remember that. But she said, you know what? That was probably just a dream. When she went to the medium told her, and by the way, she wasn't being read. She was just supporting her friend who she was there. The medium turned to her and said, your father is here, and said, you actually did die. I was there with you, and named the word Lovendeer, because Lovendeer was her mother. And she said there's no way that medium could have known that she was asking for Lovendeer. It's a very unique name. It's not easy to guess, Lovendeer. Okay, so she found out from seeing that medium that she had a near-death experience, and she learned also from the medium why she died and why she was to come back. So here we have a study, near-death experience and mediumship together, demonstrating survival of consciousness. Okay. Now I'm going to scoot through this one. Past life regression therapy. It is again another means of finding out about near-death experience, about the survival of consciousness. Quick explanation of what this is. The patient undergoes hypnotherapy. This is usually with a psychiatrist. Don't go to your doctor asking to do near-death past life regression therapy. They won't do it. They're still not acknowledging it. But if you talk to 50% of psychiatrists, they're doing it. Okay? Freud was doing it way back in the 20th century. So the patient undergoes hypnotherapy. The patient can share precise dates and names and details of past lives and experiences between lives. During past life regression, patients have been able to share life reviews. You know what life review is? Is literally when you go to the other side, you review your life. That's what we're talking about. Healing, planning for the new life, and previewing potentially new lives, and that's the concept of reincarnation. Patients are often healed of symptoms related to karmic events in their past lives. So you know that people, literally, if you're a smoker, people have gone to past life regression to actually cure their phobia. How many people have read one of the best books that I think was Many Lives, Many Masters? That's a classic. 10 people. Classic book, folks. This was one of the first books written by Dr. Weiss in 1988. Classic because Dr. Weiss, and I just could talk and talk, but I know you want your reading, so I'm just going to zip through that quickly. But Dr. Weiss is amazing. He came down to the Toronto Conference Center, tried to regress us all, but I was the only one not sleeping. I was like, you're not going to talk about anything that I'm not going to. He couldn't regress me. Basically, I'm sorry. I'm going to give you. By the way, okay, I see a lot of you standing up to try to get the information. I'm going to upload this on SlideShare. All you have to do is Google my name, and I have about 10 presentations. Some of them will be criminology. You'll want to skip those. But this will be up there in a week, so don't worry about trying to get all those references. Another classic book, though, and I'm not trying to sell these authors' books. I'm just trying to educate you and give you the information. Is Dr. Michael Newton as well, Journey of Souls, because both of these more like master hypnotherapists, psychiatrists, have regressed over 700 clients for more than 20 years. And in these books, you hear the case studies of people while they're regressed and what they're doing in their other life and where they're planning to go. Cases of enoglossy. How many people know what enoglossy is? Okay, enoglossy, very important to know. It's when you start to talk in different tongues. So if I'm being regressed and I only know French and English and I start to talk Italian, something's going on. Right? I love Italian. I wish I could speak it, but I don't. I think I know bravo. But seriously, that's what happens, enoglossy. We have cases where people will go under and they just start talking in different languages. What does that tell you? Come on, we're going to do interacting here. It's not going to be just me. What would that tell you? You've heard that a patient has been regressed and you've been regressed by psychiatrists and you start to talk a different language. What is that a sign of? Past life. Okay. I'll accept that. I'll accept that. I'm going to give you one case, which I think is fascinating. if you're very interested in this, and it looks like you are, because I see a lot of people writing, there's the top 40 cases. You can just Google that, the top 40 cases of survival of consciousness. And this is one of them. Okay, so top 40 cases of survival of consciousness. So Dr. Goldberg, he was a psychiatrist who was regressing 2 different patients. The first patient, and this is 2 different separate regressions. So he regresses and he hears Thayer. His patient starts to talk about himself as Thayer. And he's talking about being abused in Bavaria in the year 1132 and discusses several details. 18 months later, he starts to hear another patient talk about how he was an abuser. His name was Gustav, and he was abusing Thayer. And his patient was the actual abuser, and he was the master goldsmith in Bavaria in the 12th century. So when Dr. Goldberg checked his records, the reason why this is in the top 40 is that those 2 patients were living the same life. So it's, for scientists, that's absolute proof of reincarnation, because Bavaria, 1132, it's no coincidence. And they were talking about the abuse and all the details that went into that. If anybody wants to see Dr. Weiss, he usually comes to the I Can Do It conferences, and next year, okay, out-of-body experiences. Now this is my last one, we're getting to the readings. I know we're excited. Out-of-body experiences. Whatever you do, even though I'm explaining this, and Donna Smith-Moncrieffe told me this, don't go to work and talk about this in the lunchroom, that you've had an out-of-body experience. Because immediately the psychiatrist or the nurse is going to knock on your door. Right? Okay? It's only between us. Okay? Now, let me give you some symptoms of out-of-body. You notice how I'm not even asking you if you've had an out-of-body experience, because everybody, nope, not talking about it. Let me just give you an example of what the symptoms, I don't even want to use this term symptoms. If you have woken up in your dream and you're flying, that's astral travel. Okay? And also, if you've had a dream or an experience that's extremely vivid, and it's so profound, it stays with you for a long time, that's astral travel. Okay? Vibrations. Okay? When you're having astral travel or an out-of-body experience, you will either feel vibrations before you leave your body or after. Okay? And vibrations, you'll know. Oh, this lady, oh, I wish you could tell us. Because she went, oh my God, I've had an out-of-body experience. I know. Vibrations, you'll know them when you feel it. And the reason why you'll feel it, because that's your natural body. You're spiritual beings. You're not physical beings. And you're actually, when your body is vibrating, it's your cells vibrating, because it's leaving your physical body. I'm not going to tell you that every night you go to sleep, you leave your body, but it's true. Okay? From experience, people don't like me when I say that. Please don't tell me that, Donna. And not to worry, everybody has an astral cord. Okay, and I'm going to show you a picture of it, too. I had to bring pictures and stuff because I knew I'm not the medium, right? I got to be exciting. I had to bring something to compete with the mediums, right? So with the okay, I just want to give you another major, I can't forget to tell you about astrocatalepsy. If you have had an experience, somebody was laughing. They've had astrocatalepsy, okay, lots of nodding. It's not a nice experience. It's when you've woken up and you're seeing your bedroom and you're seeing everything, but you can't move. How? Okay, now people are going to share. It's safe here. It's safe. We're on film, but it's safe here. Okay? No one can see your face, but how many people know what I'm talking about? You cannot move. Look. That is, okay, I love this. I love this. Astrocatalepsy. Now, I'm going to finish explaining it. If you look it up, the materialists who don't believe in this have a medical explanation for it. Okay? But what that is so you've woken up in your room, and this has been happening to me since I'm 10. So I'm not talking about science here. I know it. Okay? And I would get up at the dinner table, and everybody, did that happen to you? I basically was up in my room, and I was looking at my room, but I was screaming. Didn't anybody hear me? I was screaming, and I tried to get myself up, and it's painful because it feels like there's something on your chest, and sometimes it feels like there's something around you, okay? And basically that's astrocatalepsy. Your soul is out and you want to wake up, but you cannot wake up because your soul's not back yet. That's what astrocatalepsy is. Okay? So a lot of you, I feel good about this. Even before the meetings, you're going, oh my God, now I know why this is happening. Okay, so let me give you some, so we know now, I saw about 50% of the hands go up. So that suggests to me that there's some evidence for yourself. And I always say, even before looking at scientific evidence, it's about your own personal experiences that will truly tell you if what we're talking about today is true. It's only going to come from your personal experience. So let me tell you what the science has to say about this. Is Dr. Corliss Osis in 1972 had individuals project themselves and describe target objects, okay, because there are actual professional projectors. Okay, look it up, Robert Monroe Institute. He teaches people how to project out of their bodies. Dr. Charles Tart in 1968 had a research participant. Now, when I say a research participant, she's in a laboratory, she's sleeping, so she's under controlled conditions. He has a random number that he doesn't even know, of a 5-digit number, and she was able to project her body and come back and tell him the 5-digit number. Okay? That actually demonstrates that you can have an out-of-body experience. Finally, Carrington in 1973 found a difference in the weight of the physical body after the out-of-body experience. So there's a change. Now, I'm going to show you a picture. Okay, what this is, and don't worry, what you could write down is it's the ITC, so you can see it for yourself. It's George Meek, worlditc.org. Okay, and what you're seeing here is George Meek. He's capturing himself in a lab of going into an out-of-body experience. This is his astral body right here, and this is the silver cord that I'm telling you never leaves you. It never leaves you, okay? And for those of you in the back, you can't see him, but it's interesting. When you go to look at this at home, he has a series. Before he actually projects out of his body, he's much darker. You can't see him, but he is here. But when his soul is left, he's barely visible. Okay, and they caught that in infrared light. So check it out for yourself. I got a funny feeling a lot of people are going to be trying this tonight. Okay, last slide to sum it all up for you. Okay? When we're talking about the science of afterlife, does it exist? We have 4 different lines of evidence. These 4 different brown boxes here are the major lines of evidence we have. We have evidence of mental and trance states of consciousness, which is through mental mediumship, which you're going to see demonstrated here this afternoon. And we also have channeling. So that's one line of evidence. Then we have physical evidence. We have physical evidence of physical mediumship, apparitions. I didn't even talk about that. That is a form of demonstration of survival of consciousness. Deathbed visions, if you're interested, I do talk about that in my book, but I didn't talk about it today. That's another demonstration of afterlife. Electrical voice phenomena, or also known as instrument transcendental communications, is another physical evidence, because we're hearing people through the radio or through printouts, or like as you saw in white noise, through the TV. Then out-of-body journeys, that's another form of evidence, because the individual is coming out of their body, or near-death experiencers. They're called NDEers. They come back to tell you about what happened. And finally, states of consciousness, past life regression therapy, and lucid dreaming. So you have 4 lines of evidence and 10 independent sub-independent levels of evidence. So I leave you with 3 questions. We have 5 to 10 minutes before Carolyn comes on. Give her a little bit of prep time. Here's 3 questions for you, but anything about my presentation you can ask, or anything that you're still wondering about the spiritual world. So what experiences have you had that have demonstrated proof of life after death? What aspects of the afterlife phenomena require clarification? And what I'm asking you is, some of the things that I talked about, and it's okay. Some of them are just way out there. You might still have questions about them, from your own experiences. It doesn't jive with you, and that's okay. from a scientific perspective, I love that because it helps us in our future studies strengthen our protocols when we hear from people who are still asking good questions. And finally, do you think we have enough evidence, 150 years, for people to understand that our souls continue beyond death? Is it enough now to mainstream this in the health so you can get insurance if you want to have past life regression? Or is it enough to mainstream in the society now? So I leave you with that. Thank you. Thank you. I'm so glad my talk is over because now I get to enjoy what you have to say and the mediums. So who's going to be first to ask a question? I'm going to give the lady sitting next to you the first chance. And we need the mic runners, please. Sorry, I forgot to ask about that, the mic runners. Oh, okay, thank you.
Is your book downloadable? Do you have an e-book? Is your book
Oh,
downloadable?
yes, the book is available in Kindle, for iPad, any digital version, Kobo. Yeah, you're welcome. Do you have a mic?
No.
Somebody's coming.
Just pass that back and you can use this.
Oh, thank you. That's right. I can use this one. Thank you. I'm always afraid of these because I'll trip myself.
My question is with regards to the ectoplasm. When you were giving us the what it's made of,
Yes.
ingredients, so to speak, how were they able to obtain a sample of the ectoplasm?
That's an excellent question. That's an excellent question because the interesting thing is during the actual physical mediumship, as I explained, no one really can talk or no one can, and I know Carolyn wants to compliment that. I'll let you do that too because I talk about her experiences with ectoplasm in the book. But from the scientists that I've spoken to, they've indicated that it's either on the furniture, it's left somewhere in the room, but it's never usually during, obviously. But Carolyn, did you want to compliment that?
Yes, thank you. Oh, I've got a mic. Okay, ectoplasm is actually life force. So if you take that from a medium, you're actually taking part of their life force. It's not a good idea. So that's why it's not taken. Okay?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, so it is interesting. It's a perfect question because even myself, I wanted to pose how they've been able to take some of these pictures and things if they haven't been able to move. But I do know that science is changing, and there actually is a medium now that's working not with ectoplasm. The reason why you and I, maybe myself, I've been invited to experience one. It takes a while to work with the sitters. In the Scholes experiment, they were 5 years around that medium to build up the physical. Because remember I explained that they were building it up through the body and the medium. So it's not something that's going to happen like today. The mediums are going to be working with you through spirit. It's very different with physical mediumship. But excellent question. Couple more questions. Yes? Front row seat should be able to ask a question. Sorry, did you know that you were going to have a workout today? Yeah. And if you could stand up for the group, because they learn from your question as well.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just interested in finding out why is it that around the world, sometimes, actually most of the time spontaneously, people experience various types of phenomena at different points in their lives. Why does it happen spontaneously, and in some cases it never happens again, or you maybe suppress it?
I love it. I totally get what you're asking, and I'm going to repeat it a bit so to make sure I'm not going off on my own way of answering things. But I believe what you're asking is, some people, for example, will have an astral catalepsy experience, some won't, or some have a spiritual experience such as I won't say near-death experience, but for example, an out-of-body experience, and some don't. So you're wondering, why wouldn't we all? So for example, dreams. I've had people, I cannot believe it, that say they don't dream. But to us, that's pretty common, right? But what I think you're asking is, why wouldn't we, because I'm taking your question a little further, especially if we are to know who we really are, that we're spiritual beings, we go on and we go on to different lives. Why wouldn't we all have these experiences so we know? Do I have it right?
Yeah, and also the many people who
Right, they'll have it more than you will. So for example, a near-death experience, some people have had 2, and none of us in here may have 1. My answer to that is that, and which is the purpose really of why we're here. We are here to have a spiritual experience. So all of us in here came to this physical plane for different spiritual lessons. We all came for different things. I know I came for patience. I've been told that by several of you. You've just come here to learn patience. I think I'm being very patient. I don't know. I'm done. I'm really done. But anyway, no, sorry. So you may have come just to learn greed, or we're learning how to be courageous. So the different spiritual experiences you're going to have from somebody else are going to be completely different. And it may not be. I have met so many skeptics. I have emails every day from the spiritual community telling me, prepare for hell, because what I'm doing is encouraging people to talk to the devil. No, but seriously, no. So I'm saying is there's 50% of the population right now that think that this is just absolutely not true. You live one life and you die, and that's it. Okay? So the point that I'm making is those people, that's fine. We have to support everybody because they're here for a different spiritual purpose. They may never, ever experience any of the things that I spoke about because that's not what they're to learn here. You see my point? It's spiritual lessons. You're tested because your soul, and when your soul goes on to a different dimension, I know you all think that you hear from, if you're a lucky one, you hear from a loved one today, that they're perfect, everything, they're finished their lessons, they're still learning. They're in another dimension learning. It's just that the different dimensions, and I keep pointing up here and I got to stop that because they're right here. It's just at a different frequency. Okay? One more big question before the meet. Oh, 2. Okay, sorry. Okay, go ahead. Could we have, yeah, thank you so much.
Hi, we have a statistical question.
Ah, statistics! Wow, you get me excited.
So if we are reincarnating,
Oh, okay.
why so many people, our population exploded, so where all these people come from?
Okay, so let me, I've heard...
New lives, I mean.
New lives. So in other words, where are they all coming from if we keep reincarnating?
Right.
Excellent question. I think I've heard that. That sounds like a question my husband would ask. So I think that's where I've heard it from. Okay, especially if you read in Newton's book, he does an excellent job of this because there's several different dimensions. So it's not one. When we talk about the other world, there's other world and this world. There are several different dimensions. And so the souls are in vast different dimensions. They decide whether they're ready for reincarnation or not. They work with their guides as to whether this is a good time for them. And so it's such a vast concept that you're asking. There's many more spiritual souls than we have in the physical earth here today. So whether they're coming back to help us on the physical plane or whether they're not, really there's many more souls in different dimensions that are that are here. So it's not going to be probably the answer. I don't know what you were looking for, but they're all also incarnating in different physical atmospheres than not just this one, because I don't know if you believe, but that there are more than this reality, right? This is not the only physical reality. I know it's a lot to take in on a Saturday afternoon. Did you want? Please do.
I'm just asking. So I'm talking with my mom.
Yeah.
Or
Could you stand up for the audience, please? Yeah.
so I'm Carol is my mentor. Carol is my mentor. Wonderful. So if my
Speak in
mom
the mic.
comes through,
Yes.
and if she's been incarnated, like, what happens?
You
That's
know-
my big question. Like, what? And my sister's passed on.
Okay.
So, thank you.
Okay, you know what? Carolyn's gonna answer this, but I'm gonna have another.
I meant to ask Carolyn.
Okay,
I thought about that about a week ago.
Carolyn, you wanna answer, and then I'm going to complement it,
Sure.
because I have a point to add to that.
Now, everybody's different when it comes to reincarnation, but on average, we wait until all our family comes home so we can have a big party when we're back home together, like a group. We tend to come in as a group, like the Kennedys are a spirit group that come together to the same life. So your mom's going to wait for you, as well as everybody else that you know over there that you know. And when everybody forgets who you are because the generations are moving on and they don't remember great-grandma anymore, then it might be time for you to reincarnate. My theory, wait till we get home to know.
And I'm not going to further complicate the conversation, but there are scientists that are talking about parallel universes. Parallel universes where souls, so for example, if your mom had, a parallel soul somewhere else, it is possible for her to be in two different realities at the same time. And I'm not going to go into the details, but quantum physics, and I've been researching this for a long time, is really starting to demonstrate a lot of validation in the 21st century now. So don't want to mix that in the pot, but there is that parallel universe discussion. Okay, we're going to take one more question. Go ahead and please stand up.
I want to bring it up too, if that's okay. I was at a
Oh, sure, absolutely. There's the mic.
Thank you.
Yeah, I guess, project. I was at a workshop a couple months back, and it was about different dimensions and stuff. And it talked about the earth transcending even and going through some kind of reincarnation.
And ascension?
Right. Can you speak about that a bit?
Wow, they're really putting this could take another hour, and then you're gonna kill me because you want to see the medium. This is difficult to do in a minute, but I'm just because my big thing here is I want to give each of the mediums their full hour this afternoon. So just to be able to say yes, so our universe is going through what we call ascension, and you will notice what that means is your spiritual consciousness is raising. You will notice a lot more people interested in mediumship. They're having more spiritual experiences, and they call it the veil is thinning. So more people are experiencing apparitions, they're experiencing out-of-body experiences, and so all of this knowledge that we're talking about, probably I would say in the next 5 to 10 years, they won't be emailing me on a daily basis saying that I will be going to hell because they will be experiencing it themselves. Okay? And the issue of the parallel universes and dimensions, I think we're still a bit far away from being actually able to show evidence of it, but quantum physics is helping us with that. So I want to thank you very much, everyone. I really enjoyed you. And